I call this meeting of the Millersville Borough Council to order as of 6 o'clock p.m. sharp. As a reminder, this is being live streamed. I ask you all now, please stand for the
America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. The evening with a public hearing with comments from the public for the ordinance to amend Chapter 305 to revise our sewer rates. We discussed this last month. The increase in our sewer rates. Will now take comments from the public based on that ordinance. Were copies made available to folks on their way in? Okay, good. Very well. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Any final considerations from council before we move to a vote? Very good. Seeing none, I would like to make a motion that we approve the ordinance to amend Chapter 305 to revise the sewer rates. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Marion? All right, seeing no further comments or having gotten none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of amending the Chapter 305, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Very well. Oh, I was supposed to do that before the Pledge of Allegiance, wasn't I? I always get something wrong on this. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda, approval of August 27th, 2024 council meeting. Presume all members of council have had a chance to review these minutes. Any discussion or objection to what's in those minutes? Very well. Seeing none, I'm going to look for a motion to approve the minutes from August 27th.
So moved.
Phyllis?
Second.
Second from Linda. Very good. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Motion carries. We will now open up the floor for general citizens' requests or concerns. As a reminder, you will be given a limit of 5 minutes to speak. We do ask that you speak into the microphones located either side of the podium up here. Remember that you are being live streamed, and please give us your name and identity as well.
He's forbidden to speak.
Just a reminder, this coming Saturday, the doors are unlocked at 8:30. At 9 o'clock, Mike is going to be the speaker at the Millersville Area Historical Society on the subject of Edgar Allan Poe. So, I hope you and anybody watching on that thing comes to our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Any further citizens' requests or concerns? Okay, we will continue on. Let's see, we'll move on to Finance Advisory Committee with a couple of older items that had to get punted because of my tardiness last time. We will begin with a roll call. Let's see, who are my finance people? 1, 2, 3, and there we are. Very good. We'll start with the low-hanging fruit, our August financial report. Any items on there objectionable or in requiring further comment from members of the committee? Seeing none, I would like to make a motion that we accept the August financial report. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And abstentions?
Sorry, we need a second.
You need a second.
Oh, I do need a second, don't I?
I'll second.
There we go. I got one of those. This is what happens when you miss committee meetings. All right. Now I believe our borough staff has a presentation for our investment strategy for us to discuss. Would you like to take it away, Ms. Borough Manager?
Absolutely. So I'm going to kick it off and give some background, and then Luke's going to come up to the podium probably now. And he'll talk about it. What we are bringing forward to council this evening is a proposal to some adjustment to our investment strategy. We provided a lot of detail in an executive summary in the backup that was available for tonight, and we're not going to read that to you word for word. We'll give you some of the highlights. To just give some background information, investment revenue is a great way for the borough to be bringing in additional revenue and ensuring the health of our fiscal situation. Generally, it's a great avenue to take because it's money that we can be bringing in. In 2023, the borough invested $1 million into a Univest account in order to increase the amount of interest that we're getting on our sewer capital reserve account. And we've seen a lot of success this year with that investment, and it's really provided an opportunity for Luke and I to look at how our other investments are doing, and if we're getting the same bang for our buck as we are with that investment. And all of this is in line with the improved investment policy the council passed back in 2019. Right now, we've got a municipal checking account that creates interest. That has our sewer capital in that one. The discussion that we're going to have this evening does not have anything to do with our main checking account. That's our members' first account. That's where most of the money traveling in and out of the borough comes out of. And we're not discussing this evening our Plickett account. That's where our liquid fuels money lives, so we're not talking about that one either. I'm going to let think about really ensuring that we are getting the best customer service. Some of this also came out when Luke and I had a really fun experience of having to change all of the bank accounts to our information, and Councilmember Gackerson is aware of this too, and Councilmember really starts to show you who has the best customer service when it comes to getting help with our investments. The timing of this is great. It'll make a lot of sense when we get into our budget.
Sweet. Just want to start off, does anybody have any questions? It's okay.
Between the three accounts, Rebecca touched briefly on the investment types for the three different banks. Can you go over those in a little bit more detail?
Market account. Our investment account, like our checking investment account, that pulls from Fulton 4.33%. what I would really like to do is just get the money moved over first. Since we already have an account set up with Univest, we already talked to the rep. It would be a pretty smooth transfer to Univest and Fulton. But we would just see, 4% more a month for Univest on average.
4% more per month, and then what is the accessibility of those funds? What's the liquidity of that account?
Yeah, pretty accessible. Since they're not going into CDs, it's just an account. It'll be a lot more liquid, and it ties into our investment. What is it called? Yeah, our investment policy.
And to what degree are you, or what amounts are we looking at moving out of S&T to match what you're looking to do in this plan?
Yeah, so in S&T, can I say the numbers? Like 2.5 million in that account. 1% is like $2,500 a month. Whereas we have $1 million in Univest, so we're getting $5,000 a month just in the one account. So, like Rebecca said, when I went into S&T and they didn't really show me a lot of service, and then I looked at what we were kind of getting from that, the interest, I kind of put two and two together and we formed a strategy on this. And then Fulton as well, like 4.33% is still really good as well. And the second part would be the CDs. That's just kind of, I'll get into specifics here. The CDs are kind of like a second avenue if we want to take that. That would just lock in a certain percentage that Univest would pay over the course of 7 to 12 months if we'd want to do that. That kind of hedges against markets dropping and interest dropping as well, so we can keep that high interest rate through.
Does that create an accessibility problem?
You can take it out. There is a fee for it. Yeah. That's why the main goal would just be to move it, and then the second step would to see like how much we'd want to.
Under the assumption that there is a certain amount of money that's going to remain untouched. The idea is that we would put it into a location where we can lock in that particular interest rate, with the understanding that we can withdraw it, but with a steep penalty.
Yeah.
What is our risk of loss of capital or anything of that nature?
No.
Not really. So Univest is an municipal governments. They serve this region. That is their bread and butter is low risk investment in line with borough code. So, and the nice thing about them is a lot of people working for them are previous borough managers, and so they know the rules. They know the value of a investment account that is specifically geared towards low risk investments for municipalities. And it's very similar, if you're familiar with the Pliget setup, it's very similar to that, and that is these are set up with municipalities in mind, and they have those high interest rates because they're pooling together other municipal funds.
Univest is the one without a penalty, correct? Univest you can withdraw without a penalty.
Well, we're talking about keeping a good chunk of money completely liquid,
Right.
but in a higher yield investment account.
Yeah.
And then maybe moving some of that
Potentially
into a
to
CD,
yeah.
which would then
If we're seeing
but
the
success.
CDs would
Which
be
we've done before as well.
And the CDs would be through Univest.
What's the interest rate on the CDs then? If we
I don't have a exact number.
It changes almost every day.
Probably
Okay.
going to be around like 4.5 to 5.
Going from 1% to 4%.
yeah, I mean, it's a big difference.
So
And I should note too that with these movements, we would ensure that the separation of accounts still exists, so that anything that's dealing with sewer capital isn't being mixed in with anything that's general fund related. That's a requirement that's a requirement across the board, no matter what municipality you are. But on our accounting side, on the accounting system side, it doesn't necessarily make a difference what bank account it's in, because it's showing up in our system as appropriately separated. But for that extra level of separation, we would also ensure that they're in separate like sub-accounts within our Univest account.
Good point.
And in looking at your plan, you would like to keep ideally 250,000 in S&T, essentially decimating what we have in there. Any reason to keep money in there at all? Especially fruitful for us.
I think the value in keeping just a little bit in there is that's
No, it isn't. That's a good idea, actually.
yeah, just in case, but we would, for the purposes of our actual funds, like our sewer fund, our capital reserve, all of those ones, for the sake of those, we would move those into these accounts that are making more money. We would sort of turn into what is now our rainy day. This would sort of become rainy day fund, so to speak, which we'll talk about a heck of a lot more when we get to the budget section of this. From the accounting system side, it doesn't make that big of a difference, but for the sake of keeping it in the account, there's the value with it being under the FDIC threshold.
By when, as far as approval or disapproval of this plan?
Sooner rather than later for two main reasons. One being we're heading into budget time and we need to budget for how much revenue we expect in on interest next year. We want that to be as accurate as possible. And if once the money is moved, then we would be able to really forecast that and have an accurate budget number. The other side too, as Luke said, the feds have talked about interest rates coming down next month. We're not sure what's going to happen. We're being told that things are already starting to, just by the fact that it's out there that the feds might be lowering interest rates, we might already be seeing some of those interest rates drop down. So it's hard to say. We know that it looks good at this particular moment, and it wouldn't be the worst thing to lock that in. But I'd say in terms of our drop dead cutoff, I think it should be before a final budget goes forward.
All right, then do you have a recommendation for an amount you'd like to see moved into CDs? I want time to consider that amount before I feel comfortable casting a vote one way or another on this. So the sooner I have that answer, the sooner I'll be comfortable casting a vote.
I think what we put into our executive summary was thinking about around $700,000 into CDs, but I think we're thinking about that more as something that would be looking at as a mid-year 2025 idea, not a January 1, 2025 idea. Because it's going to take us some time to move the money.
Then to be clear, a vote to approve this is strictly a vote to approve a transfer of funds from S&T into primarily Univest, but also Ford.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
I feel comfortable with that. Any other questions from anyone else on the committee?
Yeah, that sounds good.
And I did want to note too as well, again, I don't want to read the executive summary to you, but we did discuss this in length with our auditing firm. They're very comfortable with this. They're used to this. It happens all the time. As long as we do everything the way that we're supposed to, this won't have any adverse effect or anything on our audit. They sort of already talked to us about the best way to show it so that it shows up properly. Apparently that didn't happen with the last one. So we're going to make sure that
to recommend the investment strategy presented to us in this executive summary. Do I have a second? Mike, good?
Well, wait a minute, Mike's not on the committee.
No, it has to be just
Oh,
one of
my
us.
apologies.
He's not on finance, so I'll
No.
second it.
Very good. Those will get the credit for that one. All right, all those in favor, please indicate on the saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Very good. Next item on the agenda is a presentation of our minimum municipal obligation financial requirement, again presented by our borough manager.
Yeah, so this is a slightly dry topic, so forgive me, this isn't overly exciting, but it is a requirement of the state that your chief administrative officer, that would be me, presents to you minimum obligation is for both of our pension funds, that being our pension fund for our non-uniform employees and our pension fund for our uniform employees. Included in your backup this evening was these two little worksheets that our broker who works with us on our pension provides to us every year. It's a requirement that council, as our elected body, reviews this and agrees with the recommendation. For the last couple of years, the borough has decided to go with the market value of the assets. That's the slightly larger number than just our simple minimum mutual obligation. One of the reasons to do that, of course, is knowing that we do have a decent number of employees who are getting closer to retirement, so we do want to be adequately prepared for that. You'll notice a couple of things on the document that I put in the backup. It gives you a nice little breakdown of what our annual payroll is, generally our normal costs when it comes to actual paying for pension, calculating in administrative costs, and then also looking at our contributions that are made. Now, you'll see 0 on the contribution made for our non-uniform. For uniform, they do make a contribution to the pension. So that's one of the differences you'll see listed on there. Now, of course, the municipal obligation is much higher for the police pension fund than it is the non-uniform fund. And then something that is not necessarily spelled out in here perfectly, but is something to note as well, is that like every other municipality in the state, we do receive state aid to help pay for our pensions. So that number, you'll see that number reflected in the budget documents. It's not necessarily perfectly clear on here, on these documents, because this is really just saying, what's our minimum obligation? So there isn't any particular, you can't change it. It kind of is what it is. We are looking to elect the market value of the assets for non-uniform. That's $227,550. $519. You will see both of these numbers listed in the budget. All we need this evening is a acknowledgement and approval to move forward.
Is there not either a resolution, it seems to me a resolution, if not an ordinance, that sets the police pension percentage? You might want to check with it.
How much they contribute, that's in the union contract.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think we have to pass something. Even though it's in the contract, you might want to check, is it Doug Worley?
It was passed already, you all passed it last year.
Right.
And that continues while the budget, or while that contract is still in place.
So we don't have to do it every year?
The police contract, right, doesn't
Okay.
come up for a few more years.
Okay, and it is a resolution, isn't it?
That was a resolution.
Right, okay.
Do you have an estimation about what the state's contribution is toward this? Nothing set in stone tonight, so even if you just have a ballpark figure.
Yeah, our pension system state aid, this year we're expected to receive $221,460 from the state. We don't know exactly what the budget will be yet for next year.
And that is shared between the two pensions, correct?
That is shared between the two pensions.
That was my understanding. Okay, so
Um,
make sure.
And and you'll see this when you look at the budget numbers if we haven't received it yet, because we typically receive that either the end of September or early October. We haven't received our state aid yet for this year. But maybe by the time we look at budget numbers next month, you will notice that on there. But right now, it's zero is taken in this year because we just haven't received it yet.
Understood. Okay, and you said from us you just need a motion to move forward with this, that we
To
acknowledge
acknowledge, yeah, and approve it moving forward.
And I make a motion that we acknowledge the financial requirement minimum municipal obligation budget for 2025. All in. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Second from Marion. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Moving on.
Yes.
So a presentation of preliminary budget information, schedule, and budget goals, again, from Ms. DeSantis-Rand.
Yeah, sorry, you have to listen to me talk a lot tonight. We are heading into budgets. It is an exciting time. It's very exciting. I saw that
I'm
laugh.
eager to dig in.
Yes, good. I got to spend all day today in Gettysburg doing a budget workshop with other municipal. So I'm like super budget hyped right now. I just spent all day talking about it. I just wanted to give some big overarching information. Next month is when we'll jump into numbers themselves as part of the committee meetings, but I wanted to set the stage, one, because we have a number of new council members this year, and also I'm your new manager, so I thought it was good to set the stage about what we're going to be talking about and help answer any initial questions that you all have about the budget process itself. Next slide. So our budget requirements, these are the requirements that are required of us by borough code. Every borough in the entire state has to do these things. We have to prepare and release our proposed budget. We have to publish notice of that proposed budget, any revisions to the proposed budget, adoption of it, and then, in addition, the resolution or ordinance to levy taxes. Those have to happen before December 31st of 2024. That is a requirement, unlike the state and the federal government that don't have to pass a budget, we do. And I want to note, too, to change, or I should say to increase taxes in any way, that would become an ordinance. To keep them the same is a simple resolution. But that won't come up for this group until November and December. But those are our legal requirements. Now that obviously it's a lot more complicated than that, but those are our legal requirements at the end of the day. Next slide. On the screen in front of you, you'll see our budget schedule and where we're at. Already, we've done a number of things. We've set our budget calendar, preliminary meetings with all of the departments. My department has submitted their requests for the budget, and then this is what we're doing this evening, discussing sort of the overarching budget goals with the Finance Committee. Next things that will be happening, the Friday before the next time that our committees meet is when I will submit to the entirety of council my proposed budget for 2025. That'll give you a chance to review over the weekend and get excited for the next committee meeting on October 8th. That is when the committees, the Personnel, Public Works, and Public Welfare committees, they will get a chance to review their relevant sections of the budget, and then the Finance Committee will do a deeper dive into what I'm calling Part 1 because it made sense to break it up into talking first about operations and talking about general fund, and then for the special budget meeting that's put into the schedule every January, that's on October 10th, 2 days later, in that special budget meeting with the Finance Committee, we'll dive into everything that's not general fund, because it's just, I think, easier to break it up that way. On November 12th, then, will be the time that the Finance Committee budget, and then just due to the timing of it, that night, council will need to go ahead and approve the advertising of the budget, because we do have advertising requirements that we have to meet in order for council to be able to adopt a budget on December 10th. And we want to stick to those dates because I don't think anybody wants to be calling a special meeting on December 31st for us to try to pass a budget. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun for anybody. So we're going to stick to these dates. Any questions about those? Because I know that's a lot of information. No, that all makes sense? Okay. So, yes, next slide, thank you. So talking super big picture, our budget will serve both as a financial management tool and a policy document. We here in the borough, at least in the past, and I will continue a version of a combination of line item budgeting, zero-based budgeting, and incremental budgeting. All that to say, we look at sections of the budget a little differently depending on what section of the budget we're looking at. But for the most part, we base our budgeting around line item budgeting. But there's a couple areas that we look at things like zero-based budgeting, and we look at things incrementally. Of course, our aim in this whole process is to have a balanced budget at the end of the day. And every municipality in the county and the state have different local demographics that play into how everybody's budget looks. Talking specifically about revenue, and again, these are just some big concepts to think about as we get closer into this process. Our chief revenue, not unlike many other boroughs in our area, our chief revenue comes from real estate taxes. That's about, if we're looking at our rough numbers for this year, that's about 42% of our annual budget revenue. So that's a pretty big number. Those real estate taxes are incredibly important to the way that the borough functions. The role in Lancaster County of being the borough that has the most tax-exempt property, which is not a surprise to anyone. We have Millersville University, we have Penn Manor School District, and we have student lodging. You put all that together, that takes us to about 40% tax-exempt. So we are a borough that has 60% of our tax assessment is responsible for paying for the entirety of the budget. So we just have unique challenges that other boroughs don't necessarily have, but we also have then some value from those relationships that others don't have. For example, we'll talk about this when we jump into budget numbers, but with student lodging, we have a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. And those types of agreements are incredibly valuable to the borough when we're in a situation like ours where we do have 40% tax-exempt property. And our millage rate right now is 5.8, and we're in the top half in terms of revenue that you'll be able to dive into when we talk about budget is our earned income tax, our local service tax, interest revenue, like we were talking about in the previous conversation, revenue we bring in by having our accounts gain interest, our permits and licenses, our fees, our fines, then other things like intergovernmental revenue.
Are those lists, so is that list?
In terms of, how much we bring in, up until interest revenue. Interest revenue and permits and licensing kind of would maybe fight with each other for that slot.
Okay. So broadly speaking, yes.
Broadly speaking, yes.
Okay.
And then when we look at the other side of it, is expenses. We are, like every other municipality probably in the country, in that our chief expense is labor and the associated things of that nature. The 2025 budget what's listed is 2.75% for 2025. Because we're early still, we haven't yet received some of our items that will help determine more of these numbers, such as we haven't yet received our renewal information for our health insurance. That usually comes towards the end of this month or early next month, so we don't have those numbers set in stone yet. That'll be a very key number in helping us know more about what our labor expenses are going to look like for this year. So we're just in a bit of a waiting pattern on that one. That's not unusual though. That happens every year, that those numbers don't come until closer to when we're actually putting a proposed budget together. And then other things that make up a good number of our expenses: administration and operations, so actually operating the sewer plant, operating our street steam, etc. Materials and supplies. Community service contributions, those are the contributions that council determines as part of the budget process for groups like LEMSA, for Blue Rock, for the library. I'm missing one. I said LEMSA already.
Meals on Wheels.
That was on there in the past, although it hasn't been for the last couple of years. Missing one. Oh, the fireman relief money, but that's a pass-through. That comes from the state, comes to us, and then we send it out to the fireman relief fund. So those will be things that council will want to talk about when we get to that section of the budget conversation, is what community contributions want to be made. And then capital improvement projects, which we're going to dive into a lot this year. You can go to the next slide.
Rebecca, I have
Yes.
a question before you move on
Yes,
quickly. Other than student lodging, is there in lieu of taxes?
So the university, we have a couple of different arrangements in order to receive money from the university. One of them being and we'll talk about this more when we get to the sewer operating fund and the sewer capital fund, but we have an arrangement with them where they pay a certain percentage of sewer-related expenses that directly impact the university. I don't want to say the wrong number. 24 is what's coming to mind, unless it's in here to give you the exact number. But they pay a percentage of, like, say the sewer plant purchases something that's going to be in the budget is going to be in the purchase of a new backer truck. They would pay a percentage of that because that truck would be used to help sewer out the university. So they pay a percentage of it. So we want the university to pay for some of the things that relate to sewer that they would be using.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanted to provide this just so that we're all on the same page about what we're talking about when we're talking about our funds. The most time talking about in terms of the budget will be our government funds. General fund is our 01, sewer capital reserve, general capital reserves. We split those out specifically. You've heard us talk about highway aid. That is our liquid fuels money. Money specifically, and that's to pave roads. And then our proprietary funds are the funds that are used specifically to do a survey. We're operating in solid waste. Solid waste is trash hauling. And then an internal service fund that we have is our educational service agency. That is crossing guards. And there are fiduciary fund types. We don't talk a lot about these during the budget process because we're not actually required to set a budget for these items. Park Trust, also called the Rudder Fund, police pension, non-uniform pension, and then our deferred compensation. This will make a lot more sense, of course, as we jump in more to the actual budget conversations, but I wanted to provide this as a nice breakdown so that everybody's on the same page. Next slide.
I might ask you, wanted to meet with Phil, but that meeting you had, but it was canceled. But I wish I would have been reminded of this information when we had that discussion about the crossing guards. If they're tax exempt, they should be almost obligated to help us in more of a way with crossing guards than they do right now.
Well, they do pay for 50%. The Penn
For-
Manor School District pays for
for
50%.
50% of it.
Mhm.
Okay, it's better than nothing.
And that is in borough code.
Okay. But we have 50/50.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about here is give you a snapshot, a sneak peek of what you're going to see in this year's budget. If you've come to know me in the last almost 9 months that I've been here, I'm a planner. I like thinking about this year, next year, the year after that. That's just the way my mind works, the way I like to think about things. So I like to think about not only what our big goals are for this year, but how we're preparing for our big goals in years to come. Some of the things that you're going to see reflected in this year's budget specifically are going to be around technology improvements and HR processes. We're going to be looking at things like upgrading our permitting and utility billing software. That's unfortunately going to be slightly forced upon us because our current utility and permitting software was bought out by another company, and they're going to phase out what we currently use. So that's not going to be terribly optional, but we'll talk about it when we get there. Whether right or wrong, over the last few years, the updating of our computers has been something kind of on the back burner. It's to the point where it's causing inefficiencies and actually delaying the ability to do work, and that costs the taxpayer money. So we're going to be looking at some computer replacements. Cybersecurity, big one, something that we're going to be talking about as we get to that section of the budget, but something that's going to be really important and helps to keep the entire borough safe. And this training will be for all of you wonderful folks as well, since you use borough equipment. We're going to be looking at moving our server to a cloud-based system. I won't go into the details of this now, but we will have a proposal about. Right now, we're all hardware in terms of how we operate here in the borough facility. So we'll be looking at going to a cloud-based system. We're going to be talking more about updates for payroll and our accounting software. A lot of that coming from our recommendations from our auditors. Our employee manual and our safety manuals, they're pretty outdated. So we're going to be looking at those big time. That's a project that we'll be looking at. Luckily, that one doesn't involve a lot of money. That just involves time. Something I'm really excited about that we're going to be doing in 2025 that will be kicking off actually in October is the establishment of a certified safety committee. That's a wonderful program that the state has, is that if we establish a certified safety committee, we get 5% off our workers' compensation insurance, which is huge because our workers' compensation insurance is expensive. So any money we can get off of that is huge. Something that I'm looking and excited about is the idea of really establishing more of a traditional new hire and annual training program so that both our new hires and all of our staff are having opportunities for training on a regular basis. Things that are planned into our new comprehensive plan, or I'm sorry, not comprehensive plan, our capital improvement plan. That's going to be new, and that's, I think, going to be new for everybody. As far as I'm aware, that's not something that the borough has done in the past. We have not had a classic capital improvement plan. There have been plans loosely in place for different projects going forward, but I'm actually going to make that part of the budget this year. So you will see our budget, and then you're going to see a spreadsheet that is our capital improvement plan that looks at how we are saving money for projects not only next year, the year after, but 5 years from now. And you'll see noted on the slide in front of you tied some of our main goals to what specifically came out of the comprehensive plan. So you'll see there things that have a 1 next to them, meaning that came specifically from the section of the comprehensive plan on land use, housing, and historic preservation. Sections that have a 2 next to them are specifically called out in the comprehensive plan for sustainability, and so forth. And I won't read the rest of them to you because you can see it in front of you, but I wanted to present this tonight to be able to give you a snapshot of what you're going to be seeing in the budget this year, and to prepare you for the type of work that we're looking to accomplish over the next few years. That's what I wanted to give you tonight in terms of budget. We're going to be doing a lot of more number crunching over the next month. So it'll be a busy time in the office here, but any questions about what I've presented this evening?
Am I able to get that slide deck? I saw it wasn't uploaded on the...
Oh, yes, it'll be uploaded on the site, or
Thank you.
Will be.
It will be.
or on
It hasn't been
the
used.
SharePoint drive.
As we move through this process, I can see this being a longer discussion, and something that had been brought up as potentially prohibitively long. Do you see a benefit in having a breakout budget session above and apart from Borough Council?
That's the one that's scheduled on October 10th. That's scheduled in January. Every January they schedule a special meeting of the Finance Committee outside of everything else to only talk about budget. So honestly, what we'll achieve in the Finance Committee meeting on October 8th, like I said, it's just going to be looking at general fund in the special budget meeting on the 10th. And that's already been pre-advertised.
All right, very good.
The only other one too, it was in year 3, the sewer line replacement. And the last meeting, that sounded like it was going to be pretty important in a more recent date. So is that?
Yes, that is a situation where we are not unique in this. Every borough is dealing with this. Every township is dealing with this. Our infrastructure is aging, and it's aging very quickly. So there's going to be some necessary, just like this year the big project was the Charlotte Street sewer upgrade, there are a couple of additional sewer lines that have to be replaced in the next couple of years because they are just aging to the point that they cannot be repaired.
It could be moved up from year 3 if
Well,
it's not.
to be honest, it's going to take that amount of time to actually do all the permitting, all the preparations, and then to be able to actually carry it out in that year.
Anybody else from the Finance Committee have questions for Rebecca? Very good.
Darlene's not here. So those members of this committee are Mary Ann and Mike and myself and Darlene, but Darlene's not here. We really only have one thing to deal with tonight. It's acceptance of the resignation of Ann Thundercloud from the Planning Commission. And does anyone have any questions? Rebecca, do you know anything about this at all?
No, we received her resignation email earlier last week, and we have started the process for advertising so that we can get that filled.
Okay. Is there anything that we need from, do we need a motion or anything?
I make a motion that we accept Ann Thundercloud's resignation.
I second.
Oh, excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All opposed?
All opposed. Anybody opposed? Only 3 of us.
Yes, you know.
That was it.
Very good. We'll now move on to Public Welfare, Public Works.
Okay, roll call. This evening we have Linda Belleal, Mike Colfold, and myself present, and Darlene is absent. Rob, Code Enforcement Monthly Report, please.
Hello. So we've, as you know, we've sent out our short-term rental notices to some of the short-term rental people we've had. Gotten some good responses, but nothing too much more pertaining to that. They've either sent letters out in saying they're going to stop use, so forth. Is there any questions about the report anybody has on any violations or inspections or anything?
I read the news article, and I'd just like to reiterate that many of us on the council, I felt sorry. This is the first situation I have where I had complete sympathy with the people. I wish they could be grandfathered in, but when you mentioned the legal aspects of it, we're held to that. So I feel sorry for them, and it said that one part of the article said we're not sure why this couldn't be done, but it can't be done because of the legal aspects of it, and I feel sorry for that situation, but we're
because they're state streets, so those streets aren't going to be
Or was in the backup.
Yeah. Any questions for Rob? Is that everything?
that should be everything with my report, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. The next item on here is the continued discussion of Pavilion A naming and/or borough naming policy. That was in our backup material. We have looked at this before. I know Linda had some questions. We were not happy on the second page, several of us, about where the names of deceased individuals are being considered, the 3-year waiting period after the death. I mean, from starting at the beginning of that sentence through the rest of the paragraph, I believe several of us feel that that should be removed. Yes?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody feels. Okay, any questions on that from the committee? Okay, then on the last page, the paragraph, second from the bottom, the Borough Council will confirm property names by resolution. The Borough Council has 90 days from the receipt of the letter to act on the recommendation. In the event no action is taken by the Borough Council within 90 days, the request is denied. After talking to some on my committee, we felt that we needed to get back to people in 60 days, not 90 days. We thought that seemed a bit too long. And we felt that instead of just letting it float away into space, that it was important to have that reworded so that they received a response from council as to the situation, rather than just not doing anything and then it's considered denied. So can that section be rewritten, Rebecca?
Yes, I just want to clarify, so you're saying that, so we changed, the Borough Council has 60 days from receipt of letter to act on the recommendation. Instead of it being in the event that no action is taken, the request is denied, you wanted to say, if council wants to deny it, they have to actually deny it versus just
Exactly.
letting it go.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah.
Okay, it
I
does-
think it's not right to just let
It's
it.
not right
Well,
to just let it go.
That's fine. This is, I just want to put out there that this is standard for a lot of what the borough does. A lot of different laws and ordinances we have say that if council doesn't act on it, it's not just like if the mayor was going to veto. If he doesn't do anything, then it goes into place. So that just puts council in the position that you then have to make a decision.
I would like to poll my committee. Mike, what do you think?
I agree with that, too.
Which?
Yeah. The part about me to make the decision on this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
I want a decision.
yeah, and I think that's the general consensus of the committee, that we need to have a decision, not just let it drift away.
Okay, I'll be ready for that.
Okay, and so then once this gets rewritten, this will probably be ready to accept as a policy for the borough. Once we get that one section taken out and that last section reworded.
Yes. Do you want to bring this up for discussion again at the next committee meeting, or do you want just the changes to be made and then it come to full council for?
I think that we can make the corrections and have it come to full council for a vote.
I agree.
So that's just a vote that you all need to make tonight at the committee.
Yes, that's the recommendation we're making out of committee.
No, you have to vote.
Oh, thank you. I make a motion that that is how we proceed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Then the motion is carried and we will move forward with that. And with that in mind, because what this says now is that anyone who wishes to have something named, they need to have a letter sent to the borough, probably to you, Rebecca.
Yes.
And I'm saying that because Phil, I believe you, when you brought up the business with John Herr, that letter that you had must have gone to Parks, and they denied it?
I don't remember any letter going to Park.
You didn't, you just requested it?
Yeah, I did that back in February. It's almost 7 months ago now.
Yeah, and see, nothing's been happening, and I think we need to move on with this, so I'm going to request that you write a letter to the Borough Council to request the naming of the pavilion for John Herr, and once we have this policy, then we would be able to act on that. Is that right, Rebecca?
That's right, although I understand the timing issue, although I probably would recommend, just to keep everything above board, to wait until the policy is enacted before having anyone submit anything.
To submit a letter, okay, so that will be for you for the future. Okay, next, any other thing on the naming policy? Okay, moving on to the continued review of the RV ordinance. You should have received the changes that Rob made, and they have been highlighted, I know, and the new one. The only question I had about this is it says stored on concrete pad. Can it be macadam? Any impervious surface? Because what I see in the borough is mostly macadam, not concrete.
So what other ordinances is that we have it listed, in other places that it talks about things such as concrete, we have it listed as a pad made of asphalt, concrete, paving block, or a pervious material, parking material, or a pervious parking material. So that's how we have it in other sections of the ordinance. That would probably be my recommendation. Replace concrete with that whole statement.
That I agree with you 100%, because then that includes everything, but not grass. Okay, so we would want that to go in there before we can approve that.
I made that.
Okay.
Once I found that information, made that change.
Any other questions on the RV ordinance from anyone? Okay, then we'll get those corrections made so that we can approve that at a future meeting. Continued yes, go ahead.
Sorry, just for clarity, so is the RV ordinance being voted out of committee this evening?
With those corrections, it would be.
Okay, so we do need to take a vote,
okay.
Because it's gonna be an ordinance change, it's gonna come out of committee, then at the next meeting, council's gonna have to review it and vote to advertise, and then we have to go through the whole process of advertising an ordinance.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Then that is out of committee. Continued discussion of false alarm ordinance. We're not really going to deal too much with that tonight. We have spent an awful lot of time working on false alarm ordinances. Millersville Borough is about the only place around that does not have a false alarm ordinance. Manor Township has one, Lancaster has one, and we are getting continued requests from Blue Rock to have a false alarm ordinance. Now, I spent an awful lot of time last year working with them and trying to get Blue Rock working with the university on cutting this down, and that has helped, and it has cut down a lot of the false alarms. However, now, I got all the statistics, and as a Public Works Committee, we have pretty much decided that we were not going to move forward at that time with any kind of ordinance because we didn't really feel that it was necessary. However, now it has come up again, and this time the feeling is, and this is from Blue Rock, that it's not necessarily the number of false alarms that we get. It's the fact that they are continually going back to the same places that are having false alarms, and they have no recourse for collecting anything from the false alarm, the kids that are doing it, because it's mostly in student lodging. So we're going to take another look at this. And I'm probably going to ask Rebecca, if we can't have a small committee meeting, would not be the whole committee because of the sunshine laws, but it would be you and me and one or two from the committee, so that we can take what Joselle has written so far. We have 2 different ordinances that she has written for us, and try to come up with something that will solve this problem and make a lot of people happy. I am not a big fan of having more and more ordinances, but the only good part about this is the residents are not going to be overly affected by this because they're not the problem to begin with. So that's where we are on that one. Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, the next thing is discussion and presentation of Hometown's Heroes banner project. I want to tell you that Rebecca and Julie and her husband and I have met, and we have been working together. As you know, last year I worked with Victor DeSantis and the university to get the community and university banners, and a lot of people have requested Hometown Heroes banners. And I finally found somebody who was willing to do some work on this and help me. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie. If you could come up here and present where we're at this point on this whole project, because it is moving along, and it is moving along well.
I'm Julie Sarkovich, and wanted to do this again in honor of my dad. So we are having the banners printed by a company in Allentown. We wanted to try to come a little closer to home. A lot of people do Reno and out west. So it's called Riley's Holiday Outdoor Decor. They've been in business since 1921, so they're pretty established. A lot of people use them around here. So the banner size will be 30 by 60 inches. If we go too much smaller than that, you cannot read them. We've been around a lot of townships and boroughs, and they're way up there, and you can't barely see the picture, and you can't read who the honored veteran should be. So we want to go a little bigger on that. They will be printed on commercial grade vinyl and printed on both sides. The company guarantees them for 2 years. That is not how long they'll be up. We're hoping they'll be up for a lot longer than that. I know Ephrata's are up for quite a while. Ephrata's have been up. when it is time to take them down, they are returned to the family who bought them in honor of the veteran. So don't have to worry about storing them anywhere. Along with the picture of our veterans, the banners will contain their names, their rank, their branch of service, their era of service, and the family sponsoring the banner. I printed out two, not for a vote, just to show you what they can look like. And I will pass these around then. This is my dad. And they spelled his name wrong, even though there's only 4 letters in it. He did it real quick, it was fine. So if you want to pass them around, show them. And that's about all I have. I know Rebecca has more. And thank you, Rebecca and Phyllis, because you guys have been great.
I do
Julie, I
think
was,
that we might
Well,
want
I
to
was
mention,
taking what you talked the last meeting, and we might have made the same calls, because I talked to a guy named Alex D'Amico from, and he said that there's an order in for the pulp, like someone has started.
yes,
Oh, okay, and
that was
he,
something
you don't
that
need
we
to do
all did
anything.
already.
okay, and he said that within a couple of weeks, we'll have, that will be passed.
Yes, so
Okay.
that's the update that I'd like to give, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, and I also talked to someone from VFW. I might have had an iced tea or two while I was there, and they're very excited about this too. So, yeah, this is. So go ahead. We might have talked to the same person then.
Well, yes, because so as your borough manager, it's my responsibility to put in an application to PPNL to ask for use of any polls. Per the request of Phyllis and Julie, talking about where they thought this would be the best place to do it. We narrowed down to a couple of streets. I put in the application. I've gone back and forth with PPNL a couple of times to clarify parts of our application, to make sure that we're avoiding any fees, because depending on which ones you pick, you might get a fee involved. So at this point, after going back and forth with them a number of times in the last few weeks, we're at the point now where they're doing the final confirmation of our application. We should be finding out soon. But what has come out of the conversations with PPNL is that we are going to be restricted to 25 polls for the first year. We can do 25 new polls next year, but we are only going to get approved for 25. So that's what we'll be looking at for this year, and what you will see then in the budget, because essentially the borough for this type of project will serve as a bit of a pass-through, because there's really not another great way to do it. This will work very similarly if you're familiar with our BRIC program down at the park. And we already have an application in the office, a template application where folks will tell us what they want on their banner. They will pay a fee, which we haven't finalized yet because it's sort of going to depend on how everything comes out and what PPNL comes back with. But they will pay that fee that will cover the cost of the banner and the labor, because it is going to be labor of our street team to put those banners up, in addition to them having to rent the bucket truck, because we don't have our own bucket truck. We would have to rent that truck in order to put them up. But if all goes well, we'd be aiming for Memorial Day for everything to be hung. So we're talking 2025 Memorial Day. If all continues to go to plan. But at this point, I'd say we're at the end of the PPNL application process, and that should hopefully be the last thing I hear from them, is that we've been approved. So that's where we're at.
and I just might mention that it's our intention to have applications available by February. And it's going to be first come, first served, because we know we're going to have far more than 25. But that's what PPNL is limiting us to, so then we'll just keep the others, and the next year we'll just keep moving on and doing more. And Julie, I want to thank you and your husband for all the work you've been doing. I really appreciate it. It has been a big help.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I would hope Julie's would be number one of the 25 that we approve.
That would be nice. Is there a possibility we could townships and boroughs do that.
That's what I
So
had
that would
suggested,
extend,
that it would be, we could do 50 then, we're
Yeah.
using just 25 poles.
Yeah, and all the poles aren't, you might not be able to do that with, but,
But a lot of them
a
you
lot of
can.
them, yeah, maybe.
We'll wait to see what PPL comes back with, because they'll, or at least my understanding of talking with them is that when they give us the application, approving it, they'll say specifically how much weight it can hold. If it can hold the weight of 2, then we might be okay. It'll just sort of depend on what they come back with.
They're not very heavy.
I
I don't think that that's going to be an issue.
It's not.
From 2 sides.
I know.
That would worry me.
Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions for Julie or Rebecca or myself about the Hometown Heroes project?
May I?
Who is that?
Phil Gerber.
Oh, Phil, yes.
I drove through Columbia not too terribly long ago. I can't imagine that PP&L is limiting you to 25 poles. Throughout Columbia, they have the banners up. I don't understand why there would be any, and they don't use, people don't climb poles anymore with spikes on their legs.
No.
There.
There's two things there, Phil. First of all, we get 25 free. We don't have to pay a fee to PP&L. We can do more, but then we pay a fee for each, say we do 50. We would have to pay a fee to PP&L for the next 25. That's how that works. So, we have been talking about what the cost is going to be, and we have worked some of that into it. So I think it's possible that in the future we can either do 2 on a pole or we can do more poles, but we're still just getting our feet wet and, learning the process here of everything. And the other thing in Columbia is they have all these really neat street lights in Columbia, and they have them on those poles. So they have a lot more in Columbia because they're using a lot more poles than just PP&L.
Do you know what the fee is?
I'm sorry?
What the fee is from PP&L?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
It's $300
$300.
that they charge for the banner, to put the banner up. Is that what you meant?
No,
The engineering fees.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The engineering fees are all based on which pole it is, because it's
okay.
based on what equipment's on that. They have to do an engineering study for each pole that we want to use that's outside of the 25. But it's 25 a year, so next year we could have 50. The year after that we would have 75. So it's just year 1 would be 25. I think Columbia's been doing it for a number of years, so they've probably been able to add.
Well, and see, that's the thing. You can add every year, but I do know from talking with the borough manager in Corryville that when they started this project down there, they had a couple hundred applicants immediately. And I honestly think, now Millersville's not as big as Corryville, but I really believe that we're going to get an awful lot of applicants. I really do. So we're going to have to make some adjustments as we go, but at least we're on the move and we're getting something done about it. And any input that you have, Phil, would be great. We'd love to have it. Anyone else have any comments about this project? Okay, the next thing then on public welfare is snow removal contract.
So as many of you are probably already aware, every year the borough, in preparation for if we get an abundance of snow, we have a contract with a company that can provide us trucks and labor in the event that we get a lot of snow and we need help with snow plowing. We receive quotes, just like we do for other things. We go with the lowest quote. We received a quote from our current contractor, Keenan Excavating and Concrete. It's for $115 is their hourly truck rate for snow removal for 2025. That's by far the lowest number that we continue to So the consideration would just be a 1-year contract. Unfortunately, due to a slight miscommunication, the contract isn't in your backup documents. However, I have a physical copy of it here. This is a standard thing that comes before council every year, just to do a 1-year contract for snow removal. That's all I have on that one.
Does that require a motion, or is it just informational?
Yeah, we would
You
need
need
this
a
to come out of committee, yeah.
Then I move that we get a 1-year contract to Keenan Excavation and Concrete for snow removal for the borough of Millersville.
I'll second.
Everyone in favor signify by saying
I don't
aye.
think,
She can't.
yeah, I don't think she can second.
Somebody else has to second because you're not on the committee,
Oh, okay,
on this committee.
yeah.
Second.
We've got a second.
I can
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And the motion is carried. And that ends Public Works for this evening.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of real quick things. Last Wednesday, Rebecca and I had the pleasure of going to the Millersville Business Association meeting. They're obviously getting prepared for this Saturday from 11 to 1:30, Saturday in the park by the Business Association. So those who are joining Phil on a Saturday morning to hear Mike talk about they go out and talk, after they're done, they can come down to the park and enjoy a couple hours of festivities. They're also getting ready for next Saturday, which is the parade in Millersville. So what I do, a quick shout out to Councilman Mike. Came driving down her avenue the other day, and there he was out there painting some of our fire hydrants in the borough. So Mike, thank you so much. Your work is greatly appreciated.
We have 23 bright and shiny new fire hydrants.
That's it. All right. Then we will move on to our manager's report. You haven't done enough talking this evening.
And I was gonna say, I've done so much talking this evening, so I only have one thing, because most of my items already come up. Just to alert everybody that our trash and recycling removal contract, the bid closed yesterday morning. And then we expect to award that at your next meeting on September 24th. We'll bring forward to you that contract for approval at the next meeting. I just want everybody to know that our bids closed on that yesterday. And I look forward to seeing folks Saturday in the park on Saturday.
I thought it was on Sunday.
Saturday in the park. That's funny. That's funny.
All right, I have nothing for the president's report, except to enjoin everyone to please think of our veterans tomorrow as we memorialize the anniversary of September 11th. Otherwise, we will open the floor up one final time for citizens' requests and concerns. If anybody has anything they would like to bring up to council here at the end. I didn't think so. It's the third chance I've given you all. I don't see any need for an executive session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mary and
No, it was
Phyllis.
Linda.
It's Linda.
Oh, I'm sorry, Linda. My apologies.
That's fine.
One of the ones on my left. All those in favor of adjournment, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? We stand adjourned.
Spain from